You need passion. You need desire. You need want. You're going to have something come up from inside. We play with that passion. We play together. We play for each other. And we play to win. We are Notre Dame.
Hello, Irish Nation, and welcome to the official Legion of the Leprechaun podcast, where we have a conversation with you, the fan. I'm Mike McClure, your host, here with my co-host, Mr. Sean Buck. The email for the show is podcast@legionoftheleprechaun.com if you'd like to reach out. And for the coolest merchandise, clothing, and apparel, check out our website at legionoftheleprechaun.com. We got new t-shirts out, folks. Haters gonna hate. Ain't that the truth? Isn't that right, Sean? How you doing, brother?
Good, Mike. Good. What's going on in your world?
Oh, you know, hanging out in the studio. I'm glad to be back. We took some time off. We did a show last week. I'm just glad to be back in the studio. What's going on in your world, my man?
Staying busy. Irish football approaches pretty fast, so looking forward to that. Got the big kickoff against Florida State, and if you're an Irish fan, you hate Florida State, and we all dislike Florida State. So big game coming up in Tallahassee. Gearing up for that. Getting summer things taken care of around the house, stuff like that.
My backyard looks like a forest. I got some work to do. We've got a lot of rain.
We got a little bit of rain. Like, torrential downpours for all, I don't know, maybe not 40 days and 40 nights, but maybe a third of that, I think.
Yeah, you know what? So, you know what I think we should do, Sean? I think we should quit blabbing and bring on our guest. What do you think?
Are you ready?
No, are you ready?
Legion Nation, are you ready for this guest?
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest joining us on the show today, son of legendary Hall of Fame coach Frank Leahy. Please welcome Mr. Fred Leahy to the program. Fred, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, and it's a pleasure to be with you guys.
You got it. Well, thank you for coming on. We're really excited to chat with you. So, Fred, what are you doing these days?
Well, I'm retired and living in Prescott, Arizona. Came over here about 5 years ago from Southern California. Unfortunately, many Trojan fans live there, so it's wonderful to be away from Southern California.
We just loathe the USC. Just like, ugh. So, tell us, how'd you hear about the Legion of the Leprechaun? What brought you to us?
Well, I have to credit my stepson, who is a police officer in Indio, California, because I get on all sorts of Notre Dame sites, from ND Nation to Mike Franks, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, he called me one time and said he just discovered the most wonderful site in the world, and I should join. So, he is as big a fan as I am, so I immediately joined, and it's like, I don't want to say a cult, but the Facebook people that get on there with all their memorabilia, the flags and everything. So it's been a wonderful discovery, but I owe it all to my stepson.
Right on.
That's pretty cool. Hey, Mr. Leahy, I wanted to ask you a question. Your father's first head coaching job was at Boston College. And then he received the call from his alma mater, one which caused a little bit of controversy. Did he ever talk about his decision to return to South Bend, and was it a difficult decision?
Yeah, he mentioned it, later in life, and obviously a lot of the books. But he had a clause in there, and Dad had an absolute love for Knute Rockne. And Dad had many knee injuries when he played for Rockne, and it was during a lot of these hospital stays where they would be there together. And Dad always said, I want to be a football coach like you. And so Rockne would throw over a stack of letters and say, here, tell me which one interests you. But that just indicates his love for Notre Dame. And he did love Boston College, but like everybody else that, had that clause, even though Holtz didn't go to Notre Dame and Era didn't go to Notre Dame, Dad loved Notre Dame more than I think any human being I've ever known. So it was a no-brainer. And as you guys know, he'd only been there 2 years and had been very successful. So Boston College wasn't real happy with it. And I think that unhappiness has lingered even today because who knows what Dad would have done there. But yeah, and Dad, I remember once showed me, all of my brothers and I, a letter when he was like in high school, that his goal was to go to Notre Dame and play for this coach, Newt Rockne. So it was magic, and it caused quite a stir with Boston College. And yeah, the Catholic priests, when they get a little snooty, it can get ugly.
It certainly fueled the fire for the Holy War, it seems, that's for sure.
That is for sure.
Your dad is one of the most successful coaches in Notre Dame history. He was also known for being relentless in practice. Did he ever carry this over into his personal life, or did he leave it all in the field?
Dad was the most competitive human being I've ever known, and his burning desire to win. And when you would talk to Leon Hart and Johnny Lujack, Johnny Latner, his players, every one of them to a T said, one thing we all have in common, you Leahy boys and we players. Your dad treated us all the same, like dirty, rotten dogs. And Dad was relentless at practice. And every one of his players would say they looked forward to the games because the games were easier than the practices. And it carried over to Dad, his competitiveness. And one thing I have to say, one of Dad's goals was to go 10 years without a defeat. And he went 4.25 years. And competitive, growing up when we'd play ping pong, he would cheat, he would distract you, he'd do anything to try to win at poker. But I'll tell you a little example of his and Dad's stress fundamentals over, and he would say, let's run that play again, let's run that play again. And as you know, he can be very sarcastic. Well, you probably don't know that. And he stopped practice one time, brought everybody in, blew the whistle, and he called his players lads. And that's what he called my brothers and myself. And he said, lads, we're going to start from the beginning. And he held up a football. And Ziggy Zarobsky, who was Dad's comedian on the team, and Dad realized he needed that, Dad held up and said, lads, this is a football. And Ziggy popped off. He said, Coach, slow down. You're going too fast. It was intense with Dad. And I'll give you one example. My oldest brother, when he was in high school, went to work for Sears in the shoe department. And my dad made him go and check out 2 books, one on the human skeletal foot and one on the human muscular foot. So my brother could become the most knowledgeable expertise on the human foot. Yeah, and I see your eyes bulging out. We used to do that at home, say, are you kidding? So it did carry out to life. And as you know, when Dad left Notre Dame, well, and that's another story, he was the general manager for the Los Angeles Chargers for a few years. And and Al Davis was one of his best friends who gave Dad's eulogy. He said, man, your old man, he said, he just is relentless 24 hours a day. And, you know, I had the pleasure of meeting Vince Lombardi, who played for Dad at Fordham when Dad was the line coach. And Vince Lombardi in his books credits Dad as the best coach he ever had because of the attention to detail. So to answer your question, my long way, yeah, Dad was a perfectionist. And I think I told you guys once before, and I'll stop with this one. We had a big house in Long Beach, Indiana, big yard. And all my friends, my brother's friends, would come to our house to play football in the front yard. Well, my dad came out one time and saw us goofing around playing. And he did his little speech. He said, lads, let's disperse with the game and let's work on our fundamentals. So he had 8, 9, and 10-year-olds practicing centering the ball, throwing the ball, blocking. Needless to say, my friend said, you know what, we're done playing football at Leahy's house because that was Dad. His players would just, and I have to tell one story, such a fierce competitor. One of his players, because back then they didn't have face masks, it was about the second quarter, and one of his players, his front teeth, 2 were knocked out, 3 were chipped, they were bleeding. And the trainer comes over and says, Coach, you know, I think we need to send him to the locker room. And my dad asked the player, and Dad always addressed individually, son. He said, son, do you anticipate eating a meal in the next 60 minutes? And the player said, well, no, coach. So my dad said, well, then get back in there and finish the game. And that's how Dad was. He just intense as can be. So hopefully I answered your question, because in the business life, he was the same way. And he was very hard on himself, and he was not the successful businessman as he was a coach. He did a lot of sports shows in Chicago and things like that. But, the sad part is he was done coaching at age 45 at the top of his game. But, when you look up intense in the dictionary, my dad's picture would be there.
Wow. All right, folks, we are here with Mr. Fred Leahy, son of legendary coach Frank Leahy. So, Fred, what is the fondest memory of your father?
Dad was not a cuddle bug. Man's man, shake hands. Yes, sir. No, sir. And it's funny because now all my brothers and our kids, nephews, nieces, we are the biggest cuddle bugs in the world. Like if I saw you guys, you'd have to pry me off you because I'd be cuddling you. But there are a few fond memories. Dad was tough on compliments. And I remember in 1964, we moved from Denver, Colorado to Lake Oswego, Oregon, south of Portland. Dad always, with his players and everybody, stressed leadership and education. So we moved to Lake Oswego in June of 64. And in August, we started football practice, and I was on the 9th grade team, and I was a quarterback. And I will give myself some credit. I was a pretty good high school quarterback. Didn't have a lot of speed, but I could throw it well. Anyway, our first game, and Dad didn't attend a lot of games because he was busy traveling. He belonged to the world. But he did attend my first game as a freshman. And we beat the heck out of this team. And I was like 21 for 27, 200. And this is as a freshman. So as we get home, he goes, he said, son, I'd like to talk to you. And I thought, oh, good. He's going to tell me what a great game I had. And he said, I'm so proud of you for being elected captain of the football team. And he tousled my hair, and that was it. And I remember that because those are the things he always stressed. So that was one. And I think the other one was his later years as he was dying, last 4 or 5 years. He and Mom, you saw a side to them that they really stuck it out throughout the years, because when Dad died, there was a real political pull. Notre Dame and his players said he should be buried at Notre Dame. My mom said no. Notre Dame had him for all these years. I want him here so I can go visit him. And so they had 2 ceremonies, one at Notre Dame and one up at the University of Portland. So my fond memory is that in the end, Mom and Dad, they had this cute little relationship that was wonderful to see. And I think my third fond memory was when Dad was dying of leukemia. And I've told you guys before the tension between he and Hesburgh as to why Dad left Notre Dame / was let go. Father Hesburgh came out Dad's last 4 days and just hung out. They talked, they laughed, they reminisced, they hugged. They made up for all the Cold War they had over the years. And to sit in there and watch these 2 giants talk and laugh. Poor Moose Krause, they picked on him a lot. But it was just eye-opening to see these 2 great men put down their swords and say, yeah, Father Hesburgh was 32, 33. Dad was just turned 45. So that's probably 3 of my fond memories of Dad. And there were quite a few, but those are the 3 that strike out to me to kind of show, the evolution of a guy who was a coach young age and then in the end became a cuddle bug.
Wow. Let's switch gears here for a second. So Fred, what is the best Notre Dame football game you have ever seen, either in person or on TV?
Well, I was at the 93 Florida State game because my nephew, Ryan, whose nickname is Bubba, was the starting guard in that team. And I have to tell you, getting tickets, and Bubba, who is a typical Irishman, he could sell ice to the Eskimos. He got about 20 tickets, and we all went there. And as you guys know, it was the first game day that was there. We were interviewed, but that game was electric. And I do remember seeing the 88 Miami game on TV, which my older brother went to. So I'd say the 93 Florida State, but I'd have to say that 205 USC game, I was coming out of my seat, at that thing. And it's funny, when I watch Notre Dame play, like you guys may have remembered the UCLA game where Samardzija scored with about 23 seconds. When it's a close game and tight, I can't sit down. I walk outside, I plug my ears, I go through this, and I go crazy. My dog is going nuts because I'm screaming at the TV. But the Florida State game, 93, for me, live. And it's, the first time I just got up and I ran on the field, tried to find Bubba. But yeah, that was impossible. So, the 93 Florida State, and then watching on TV the Bush Push game. It's like, what a heartbreaker. It's like the old TV series, The Thrill of Victory, The Agony of Defeat. We all went through that, the Bush Push game in 2 minutes time. So those are my two favorite. But, when I was little and Dad was done, we would always go to the games because part of his retirement was 50-yard line tickets, about 15 rows up. And it was always amazing to go there and watch a game. I just fell in love with the fields there. The only bad thing was the gentleman in the box in front of us smoked the stinkiest cigars God ever created. And that's why to this day, when I see a cigar, I go the other way. It was horrible. And so, yeah, that's my experience for game time there.
That's awesome. The 93 game, I watched it on TV. I wasn't able to go live and watch it in person, but that's one of my favorite Notre Dame memories growing up watching football. At any football, professional, collegiate, doesn't matter.
Yep.
That game was so significant. And it's funny because a good friend of mine at the time was a big Florida State fan. Really just because Florida State was coming into their own. He's a bandwagon jumper.
Sure.
This guy became a Patriots fan too when they began winning.
Oh.
So if that gives you any idea. So, going into the game, there was a lot of back and forth, Florida State's going to wipe the field and blah. I'm like, listen, you don't come to South Bend and talk that smack and walk away unscathed. I'm telling you, Miami tried. And he's like, we'll see. And when the game went final, we didn't have cell phones back then. I didn't, and so I called my buddy and I was like, hey, how'd that game go? And he was beside himself. He was so upset. He just absolutely beside himself. But
that would have been a heartbreaker for them to lose.
The way the Florida State fans felt at the end of the game of the century is the way we felt the very next week against Boston College. That was just that was an absolute heartbreaker. I remember that, and I was same thing, watching in my living room and just going, this can't be happening. Yeah. Incredible stuff.
No, and that Boston College game, Ryan said, was probably one of the lowest points of his life because, they had it. And he, to this day, still says, and I believe, they should have been given the national championship because they beat the team that got it, and it was the second to the last game. But Boston College fans that tell me to get over it and to go away. I hate Boston College.
They'd especially tell you to get over and go away, right?
Yeah.
That's something. Now, you mentioned you played sports growing up. Were any of your sports experiences shaped by your family's connection to Notre Dame?
Well, it's funny. I was number 6 out of 8 kids, and I had 3 older brothers. Mine personally, growing up, because we all had scholarships, and Dad would always say, get good grades, keep your grades up so you can go to the beloved university. He never called it Notre Dame, the beloved University of Notre Dame, or the beloved University of Our Lady and all this stuff. So that was drilled into us. My oldest brother, Frank Jr., was a second-team All-American in high school, and he went to Notre Dame and played for Terry Brennan. But unfortunately, there was a young man that my dad recruited there, Paul Horning, that was a pretty good quarterback. So my brother didn't get much playing time. And
pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, so, but for me individually, all my brothers, and my next, Ryan, Bubba's dad, played on the 66 team. He was a fifth stringer. He was my original Rudy. He was dog meat for those players. And he did get in, and I was a freshman back there. He got in the last game against Georgia Tech, and I ran down the field, took a picture. The ushers threw me out. But, so yeah, Jim played there, Ryan. And I had a dilemma. I was a good high school quarterback, and in the Pacific Northwest, I probably could have gone to Oregon, Oregon State, something like that. But I would have broken my dad's heart. But I was not good enough to play football at Notre Dame. So, but yeah, to answer your question, everything we did, my older brothers were the ones, they were great older brothers. They'd take me out with them to go to the park, play football. They would all teach me how to pass, catch. So it was a wonderful environment. And, you know, every once in a while, Dad would come out, like when he knew I was a quarterback, and he discovered this in 8th grade. He came and worked with me a little bit. And then he was kind of associated with the Denver Broncos and had a couple of those guys work with me. So, yeah, sports were big. You know, but back then I was 5'10", 185. Could have gone to a smaller college, but yeah, it was Notre Dame. And I realized there that, yeah, there's Notre Dame, and back in, you know, 68, 69, there was Oregon. So, yeah, I didn't play any college sports after that.
Have you attended any games recently, you know, like just before the pandemic? And if you did you have a tailgate checklist or campus checklist or routine on game day that you follow?
Yeah, we try to go back. We were going back every year, and then the pandemic hit, so last year we didn't. But yeah, we have a very definite routine. And my brother-in-law, who died, the one I told you about 4 years ago, he was our trip Nazi. And as we invited guests to go with us, we would get there, and if they had to go take a nap in the middle of a Friday before Saturday, because walking the campus was tiring, they never came back. They were never invited again. So yeah, we've been back to many games, Michigan game, and do that. And we do have some traditions. We try to get there on a Thursday night late. And we walk the campus at night. The grotto is my favorite place. It's peaceful. It's just peaceful. I love it. And we go into the basilica, and we walk everywhere, go into the huddle and eat. We also walk around the stadium, see Dad's statues and the others. But then we stick around for the midnight drum. I just think it's special. It just is, it's all part of it. So then we go back to our hotel, and we get up at the crack of dawn, eat breakfast, and we hit the bookstore. And we have a little bet that whoever spends the most money at the bookstore has to buy dinner that night. And as you guys know, the bookstore will never go broke. It's like a Notre Dame pencil costs you like $7. So, yeah, we do the bookstore. And again, we take it all in as the crowd starts to come in. We eat our brats, but we also, and I should say the night before, you know, when the band is practicing, we go and listen to them as they march over. But game day, yeah, the player walk is just awesome. We've never missed that. And, you know, when the band does their thing down at, and I can't remember where it is, But yeah, we're as much a fan as the band. And when the band marches through the quads and over, yeah, we are like little leprechauns following along, playing that, running. And a lot of times one of us will step in a gopher hole and break an ankle, and we just pick that person up and carry them. So we take in everything. And I think next to the grotto, because I love the alma mater, the trumpets in the dome before the game, and even at 4:00 the night before the game. And you got to get there early, because I like leaning over, and I don't give up my position at the railing unless it's for a little kid or something that has never seen it. So those are the traditions I love. And it's funny, when Ryan played, it was wonderful waiting outside the old stadium when they'd come out of the locker room. You know, we'd get all the players' autographs, we'd hug Bubba and talk, and anybody that has a player or a friend or the parents that have, it's wonderful, especially after a win, the way the fans just congregate and wait for the players. It's just magical to me, everything they do. But to me, the band, and I do have some traditions, and I've got brothers, nephews. I've never left a Notre Dame game early. They could be getting beat 50-0. And I tell people that want to leave, if there's a foot of snow out and it's 10 degrees, I say, hey guys, suck it up. The players are down there playing to the last play. The band is playing to the last note. You don't leave until the players leave and the band leaves. Then I leave. So yeah, I'm kind of a fanatic, and if people can't adhere to that, they go down on my trip list.
Amen to that. No, and you know what? I definitely share I'd say that we share a special kinship about the grotto.
Yep.
There's just something about that place, and going there at night. I think we've talked about this before. Going there at night.
Yep.
The kind of peace and serenity that you feel. And, you know, it's especially in my mind, too, when it's middle of winter covered in snow, it's just such a beautiful sight. You can go there and collect your thoughts. And I am 1,000% with you about staying until the players are off the field.
Yeah.
They're going out there and putting their all on the field for you. The very least we can do is show them support too. Absolutely.
And the alma mater, when they go over to the corner.
I love it. Sing it.
Yeah, I
do
too. Yep.
Well, that you basically answered the question I was about to ask. I was going to ask you what's your favorite landmark on campus. So I think we got that established. So we'll just move on to the next question that I had for you, Fred. So we're going to shift gears here a little bit. So what's your take on the upcoming 2021 season?
Well, you know, one of my fanatical habits is I follow recruiting religiously. And boy, I'll tell you, Coach Freeman has just brought a whole new dimension to recruiting. I think they're going to be good. I think that, Kane or Cone, however you pronounce it, is going to do pretty well. I was a huge Ian Book fan. He took a lot of criticism, but boy, when receivers were covered because they couldn't separate, his running ability was wonderful. But yeah, everybody's an armchair quarterback, but I think they're going to do really well because the running backs are strong. And I do think that with Lindsey and some of these other guys, this is going to be a breakout year for them. And I think Tommy Rees has learned, we got to get them the ball pretty quick and change it up. Last year we ran a lot more than I thought we would, but I think these guys will really separate. What I love is the freshmen. These guys, we're going to see some freshmen play. And when you see these guys without their shirts and their quickness, it's like, oh my God, they're beasts. So I'm really optimistic that the defense is really going to come through for us. The offensive line the same way. But as people tell me, I always predict a national championship every year. So I'm a glass half full type guy.
Back when Brian Kelly was a head coach, and I said this last week on the show, that back when he was at Grand Valley State, Brian Kelly didn't win a national championship until year 12. And what year is he coming into now?
Yeah.
year 12. I'm not
He's
saying
coming
anything.
up on
I'm just
12.
saying.
I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, but if you go back and look at his win-loss record, and then you just see this huge shift in, because he made some changes, and whatever those changes were, it got him national championship. So, and I don't know if you listened to it, and again, this is another thing I mentioned last week. Marcus Freeman was on the Zorch podcast, and if you want to listen to the Zorch podcast, you just go over to youtube.com and search Chris Zorch. And you can pick up any of his, you can watch his shows there. But he had Marcus Freeman on last week. I don't know if anybody here watched it, but Marcus Freeman was saying that his conversation with Kelly was something along the lines of, "I'm sick and tired of losing to Alabama. I'm sick and tired of losing to Clemson." And that's the kind of thing that's very refreshing to hear from a coach, because you don't hear that from Brian Kelly and talking to the media like that. You see the nice, the nice haircut and the clean shave, the nice suit, and the very politician looking kind of deal. That's usually what you get from the media, but it's very refreshing to hear kind of what's said behind closed doors.
Well, and that's an important point, I think, that needs to be made in my opinion. Now, Mr. Leahy, you've watched more Notre Dame football than Mike and I combined, I would imagine. However,
I'm a little older.
I've watched a lot of it. That being said, though, the one thing that all of our national championship teams have had, the one thing that I think we've kind of been in short supply, just a little bit short on these last couple of go-arounds where we've made the playoff and just haven't been able to get through that next step. We need somebody with that mean streak. Yeah. We need somebody with that fire, that passion, that wants to punch through and say, no, you know what? We're going to go out there and we're going to whoop them. That's it. We're going to beat them. It doesn't matter who you put in front of us. This is our house. This is our time. We've missed that. We haven't had enough of that on our team. And I mean, Brian Kelly, he's a fiery guy. He kind of took a step back from that, out of necessity because he had to let his other coaches coach. But I think you need that. I think you need that with a Marcus Freeman. I think you need that with some of these defensive edge rushers. You need a nastiness from your safety. You want somebody who plays with an edge on your offensive line. Somebody who wants to just go out and hit people. And we have a little bit more of that. That might be enough to push us over the edge because talent-wise, we're not that far off, in my mind.
Yeah, and I agree because I think after 2016, Kelly has stepped up his involvement in recruiting. And I think that's needed because when you see or read or hear what Saban does and Dabo does, Kelly is more, I think, of a CEO, but he has to get there. Number one, and he has done that the last few years. But you mentioned Chris Zorro. Now, there was a guy that if I was in a bar fight, I would want him because he'd just never stop. And when you look at, players, like that, and I agree 100% that you just can't accept losing. And I think we have the talent. And now I think with Freeman, he will fire these guys up. I'm so anxious to see the Florida State game, what he brings. And the one thing, recruiting lately, we have a lot of depth. So these guys can go hard. 2, 3, 4 series, bring in a new set, they can go hard. Because the last couple of years, you don't see the linemen, offensive, defensive, with their hands on their hips bent over like you used to before. And I think Ballas, the strength coach, has done a phenomenal job. So we're getting closer. And, like Mike says, maybe year 12 here at ND will be the magical number.
I think a lot of people aren't giving Notre Dame enough credit. I mean, a lot of people are just, they got a new QB. Well, people are forgetting that Jack Cohn has got experience. And he's got that
Rose Bowl experience.
He's been in those big games. He's played against Ohio State. He's played against Michigan. So he's played in the Rose Bowl, like you said. And, we got a guy that's coming in that's got the experience. And we got, Drew Pine, who's been in the system for a while now. And you got Tyler Buckner, which is a really good athlete, but a little bit of a concern because he hasn't played football in a couple of years. But he is got a lot of potential, and he is going to be a star, I think. So
I don't think that kid knows, or anyone really knows, what Tyler Buckner's ceiling is yet.
Yeah,
I don't think he's come close to it, and he's shaken off a year and a half of rust. But in the blue gold game, what did he do other than engineer 2 touchdown scoring drives? The only 2 touchdown scoring drives of the blue gold game. That's how good the defense was.
Yep.
I mean, did they just not see enough tape on this kid? Did they not take him seriously? Whatever the case was, they couldn't stop him.
Yeah.
He looked great.
Yep.
Jack Cohn, he's got a good delivery. He's got that poise and that pro style quarterback feel that you want in a pro style offense. Pine has a little bit of athleticism. He has a good arm. I mean, at quarterback, we could really be in a much worse spot than we are, considering we just lost arguably one of the greatest quarterbacks in Notre Dame history to the New Orleans Saints in Ian Book.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And I think the whole thing is the mindset of the team. They got to be mean and nasty, and I just can't wait for it though. We're about a month away.
We are really close. Mr. Leahy, it has been an absolute pleasure. You had any final thoughts? Anything else you'd like to get? I love talking to people that actually have a passion for Notre Dame football and have a passion for the things that we talk about on the podcast and on the page. What final thoughts can you give Legion of the Leprechaun Nation out there?
Well, one thing I've always loved about Notre Dame, you can go to Florida, you can go to Alaska, Hawaii, and you'll always see Notre Dame shirts. I think they have the best fan base in the world. They can be critical, but what I love about the Notre Dame fan is it's that connection. What I take pride in, too, is it's just not about winning. When first-timers go to Notre Dame and talk to their fans, there's no F-bombs dropped. There's no vomiting a lot in the tailgate parties. The kids can talk. The whole culture of Notre Dame. And like I said to you guys before, if I wasn't married, I'd live in South Bend at Notre Dame because it's just a magical place. And the football tradition carries over. And like when I get on Facebook and get on, Legion of the Leprechauns, so many different people, walks of life and, the flags that they want and the shoes that they want. And it's just a great, great site. And I will say one thing what I love about it, and I won't mention the site that is so negative, the optimism and happiness on your guys' site. It's like, if I had $1 for every Go Irish, response, I'd be a bazillionaire. So it's a very positive site, and it's only going to get better. So I do owe my stepson a world of gratitude for turning me on to it, because at the end of the day, I love, I've got my little Fighting Irish leprechaun. It says Go Irish there. But I love the mean leprechaun. I just think, you know what? 1 year for the shirt that they put out, just put that on there and say something like, we're going to kick ass this year. So the priests wouldn't like it, but what the heck? So I love everything about the site. So I'm a big fan.
Right on, sir. Well, we don't want to take too much more of your time. We sincerely appreciate you coming out and sitting down with us and having a conversation tonight. We really appreciate it, and we'd love to have you back on again sometime and talk some more Irish football for sure.
I would love to, and I don't have plans, but I just might jump on a plane so I can make my first Legion of Leprechaun tailgate.
We would love that. We would love that so much.
That would be incredible. That would be incredible, sir.
This has been wonderful, and Sean, now you can get out of your car and go back in.
Oh, all right. Full disclosure, Sean Buck just got called out. He's broadcasting.
If you get out to Arizona, give me a holler.
Will do.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Hey, Fred, thanks again, sir.
Go Irish. And I hope a police car doesn't come in behind you there, Sean.
That would be hilarious. Thanks again, Fred.
I'd pay to see that.
Go Irish.
Bye-bye.
Go Irish. Wow. What a guy, Sean. What a guy.
It's great to talk to somebody who has that kind of knowledge, that kind of depth of knowledge about Notre Dame football, about the fan base, everything. I mean, he touched on everything. Those personal experiences that you can't replicate. You are either part of them or not. And to be so honest about his dad, his family, his upbringing, everything. I mean, what can you say? Where are you going to get that kind of information, other than from a direct descendant, of one of the greatest coaches of all time? That's amazing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, wow. All I can say is just, I'm just lost for words. And usually that's not, I'm usually a pretty good talker. So, but I'm just lost for words, man. But wow, what a great guy. And I just love the stories about, especially the story about when him and Father Hesburgh, those last 4 days. Wow, just amazing.
That was pretty special. I mean, to put something like that out there, that's really personal. And I want to thank the Leahy family for giving us a chance to talk to him about those personal experiences and those things that, I mean, who knew those things? Who out there in our group or any group, who out there is a Notre Dame fan knew those things about Frank Leahy, or the struggles, or the perfectionist nature. I mean, I guess that's kind of a trademark, a hallmark of any great coach. But I mean, obviously it was to the nth degree. I mean, and that was something that was important in all facets of life. He had his son looking at an anatomical chart of the human foot to be a better shoe salesman. I mean, that's next level, It
is. Well, I think we've taken up a lot of time, and we should wrap this up. What do you think?
I'm down. Great interview. Great time.
All right, folks, if you like this podcast, share, subscribe, follow, rate, and review, all that good stuff. It really helps out the show. We really appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got a lot of cool videos on there, folks. Go ahead and check it out. Just search Legion of the Leprechaun and hit that notification bell to stay up to date on all of our latest content. Also, if you want to enter for your chance to win some free merch from our online store, go to legionoftheleprechaun.com/podcast and sign up to be a guest here on the show, and you'll be automatically entered into the drawing. We thank you so much for joining us today. Join us here next time where we have a conversation with you, the fan. For Sean Buck, I'm Mike McClure, and until next time, go Irish.
Go Irish.